At 4:59 in the morning, with the mist curling around the iron bars of my estate gate, I watched Karen's silver SUV crawl up the drive like it was sneaking in for a burglary instead of a family visit. She had her parents crammed into the passenger seats, jittery and wide-eyed, clutching their bags like raccoons with stolen food. And then, this was the moment that still makes me grin. Karen pulled out an old brass key, shoved it into the lock, and discovered that nothing in her family's past could open the doors anymore. The reinforced gate motor slammed shut with a sound that echoed like a gunshot. Cameras blinked awake one by one, and I realized finally the game had flipped. I need you to understand something before I go on. This wasn't just a fence-line quarrel or a nosy neighbor poking her head over the hedge. This was the culmination of years of sweat money and pure stubborn will. That estate, 30 years abandoned, rotting into the earth, was the only thing I had after my life unraveled. My marriage ended in flames, my reputation in the community was nothing but whispers and pity looks, and I needed something solid to hold on to before I drowned. So yeah, I poured myself into those broken beams, patched roofs at 2 a.m. and scrubbed mold off walls until my hands bled. Every nail I hammered was one more piece of me clawing back from the edge. Karen wasn't there for any of that. She wasn't standing in the snow when raccoons tore through my pantry. She wasn't there when the bank clerk raised his eyebrows, warning me I'd signed my own death warrant by buying the place at auction. No Karen showed up later when the grass was trimmed, when the chandeliers flickered back to life, wearing a smile wide enough to hide the scheme simmering underneath. At first, she brought cookies, asked questions about my renovation, complimented the rose beds. But her eyes, they weren't looking at me. They were tracing the gate code box, the windows, the back doors. She slipped questions into the conversation that no neighbor should ask. What's the deed situation? Do you pay county taxes on the outbuildings? How many spare keys do you have? She'd laugh it off, but it was all reconnaissance. It escalated slowly. One evening I came home to find her SUV parked at the edge of my property, headlights off. Another time the side gate was hanging open, Karen and her parents strolling toward the stables like they were inspecting their inheritance. I walked them out, polite but iron-fisted, then called my lawyer the next morning. I learned fast it was easier to rebuild a house than defend it from entitlement. The thing is, entitlement doesn't knock politely, it pries. Karen's next moves came wrapped in sugar. She offered landscaping gifts, hinted at her parents' fragile health, volunteered to host school kids on the grounds. Each favor carried a hook, and each time I smiled and said no. I could see it in her jaw, the way her smile snapped tight. She wasn't asking, she was probing. Then came the open house flyers, printed invites advertising weekends at the estate using photos she'd stolen off my social media. People messaged me asking about reservations. I stared at my phone, bile rising. She wasn't trying to neighbor me, she was marketing me out of my own home. That's when doubt crept in. I won't lie to you. I lay awake at night wondering if I'd made a colossal mistake, if maybe the locals were right all along. Maybe this place wasn't meant to be saved. Maybe I'd poured 2 years of my life and every dime I had into a fantasy only for Karen to stroll in and rewrite the ending. Part of me wanted to throw the keys on the table and walk away. My heart pounded so hard some nights I thought it might crack. But then I'd walk the halls past the repaired plaster and polished wood and remember what the house looked like when I first saw it. A corpse of a home forgotten and ridiculed just like me. If I gave in now, what would that make me? A man who rebuilt a miracle only to hand it over to a thief in lipstick and pearls? No. I couldn't let her steal the only proof that I wasn't done yet. So I set the trap. New locks, new codes, cameras tucked into the corners like silent witnesses. I walked the sheriff through every inch of the system, made sure he knew exactly where the boundaries lay. My lawyer had a folder thicker than a Bible deeds permit, signed affidavits. I was ready. And sure enough, the storm broke. Karen rolled up one weekend with a moving van, a caravan of guests trailing behind her like it was a family reunion. She waved papers in the air, phony rental confirmations, and told her guests to start unloading. My cameras captured everything. I stepped out, phone in hand, recording as the sheriff pulled up behind them. The way her face fell when those red and blue lights lit the driveway, that memory still keeps me warm. Fraud, trespassing, false advertising. The deputies laid it all out in black and white. Her guests turned on her, voices sharp accusing. Karen's mouth flapped open and closed like a fish tossed on dry land. The queen of the estate reduced to a liar with nowhere to stand. For a while the heat died down. Neighbors who once sneered started giving me small nods, waves from across the street. Word got out Karen had overplayed her hand. But her pride, that doesn't burn out easy. Which brings me back to that morning at the gate. The mist, the SUV creeping forward, her parents fidgeting as if they knew they were part of a doomed play. She strutted out with the old brass key, confident, maybe telling herself she still had a foothold. The second the lock clanged shut and the cameras winked on, her shoulders stiffened. I stayed upstairs watching her jab at the keypad, curse under her breath, her parents shrinking behind the windshield like children hiding from thunder. Finally, I made my move. I stepped out of the carriage house, boots crunching on gravel just loud enough to snap their heads my way. Karen whipped around, voice trembling but trying to sound casual. "Oh, I was just checking on things for you," she lied, as if that could erase the sweat on her brow. I didn't bother to argue. I told her every lock had been changed, every code rewritten, every authority notified. The county recognized me as the estate steward. Legally, physically, spiritually, this was mine. Her parents' faces sank. I could see the truth settle in like a stone. This wasn't theirs. Not anymore. Maybe never was. Karen's lips tightened, one last desperate bluff. "I still know the old codes." I leaned closer, let her feel the weight of the words. "Every old code is dead, just like your claim." She faltered, shoulders collapsing inward, the SUV swallowing her and her parents as they retreated down the road. I stood there, the sun finally breaking through the mist, painting the gate gold like a crown. And for the first time in years, I exhaled deep, solid, final. That was the day Karen's reign ended, the day her grip slipped for good. The estate stood behind me, whole and alive, proof that resilience can outlast arrogance. And if there's a lesson in all of this, it's simple. Never confuse nostalgia with ownership. Sweat is the only key that opens real doors.